But in essence, he was not, so to speak, a human. He did not have the full power of a human intellect and pursuit and interest. There was something which I don't want to go into details. So he had a very interesting behavior pattern. He could sit by the table, and there was no conversation going on. He'd fall asleep on the instant. The minute the conversation going on, he would wake up and he could participate in the conversation. So I asked him about it. So he said, nothing's going on, so why should I stay up? Nothing's going on. So this kind of remained in my memory. It's a very powerful message. Our soul lives all the time. Not when something pricks it, something hits it, when it's cold or when it's hot. It lives all the time. And it's constantly aware of what life is about. And it's constantly enjoying life, striving more to experience life more and more, more refined and a higher level. That quality, which is, I see this, I stones for this, that quality trickles down to us through our intellect. So that in our intellect we are also aware of constant flow of life. This is essentially a primary difference, among others, between a human being and lahavdil, an animal. An animal does not have any sense of his surrounding unless it has something to do with him. And like I always say, when you see something, his only one question is, am I going to be his lunch or is it going to be my lunch? That's the only question that bothers him. What am I seeing? What is this about? What's a human being? What's a deer? That means nothing to him. Doesn't have a sense of what the world is and what reality is. A human being is diametrically exactly opposite of that. Exact opposite. The primary state of the human being is his intellect. What's reality? What is real? Why is it there? What does it represent? Like I mentioned many, many times, and we discussed it, and I don't want to, this is not the plan for today's talk, but just since I went into this, Avraham Avinu was going around. He grew up amongst Oved Avodah, idol worshippers, the lowest, the, so to speak, where the intellect was completely buried into nothingness. And Avraham Avinu, his avid intellect was saying to him, something is not right. Living, something is not right. And what was his question? His question was not, is this going to bother me? Like the Eved Avodah constantly, is this planet going to hit the earth? What's going to be? What's going to happen? That wasn't his question. His question was, what am I here for? What's the purpose of my being here? In terms of the way the Gemara explains it, the Medrash and the Rambam, Yesh balabayis l'dirazu. Is there an balabayis? Is there an owner? Is there a significance to this great edifice? This is what bothered Abraham. This is what he was interested in. Wasn't concerned, how am I going to make a living? How am I going to survive whatever till tomorrow? That wasn't his question. The question is, what is this about? This is the primary state of the human intellect. That state of intellect doesn't need to be awakened. It is there all the time. And this is why a human being stays alert and is in constant state of observation, constant state of thought, and process everything that he experiences. And this is how he grows, and this is how he gets a path and a clarity in his life. Okay? For those to whom this is pertinent, I think it's pertinent to everyone. But coming back to our pastor, as we always basically base our discussion on Tuesday on the pastor of the week, primarily based on Rebbe's Sichos, and then, as I said all the time, based on ourselves. There are many Sichos of the Rebbe, but the whole Sicha is based on the name of the pastor. But the Rebbe points out that name in Torah in general, the name is of great significance. The name represents the very essence, the very reality, the whole pastor. And the name in Apitoira, a name that was given Apitoira that Eden gave, has very profound significance. And this passage, there is a long Sikh of the Rebbe, based on just on one word, the name of the base passage. The name of today's pasha, everybody knows, is Emoir. The word Emoir means say. Say. And it said it's a long discussion in the Sikha from Rebbe. What is this referred to? Straight out, when it says say, it's a directive. You should say. Actually, this seems to be going contrary to many other directives in the Torah. Don't talk too much, right? Do and don't talk, right? And altogether saying, who knows, if you speak a lot, who knows where that's going to take you. You may be, like it says, you must not speak about somebody that if you're in a company of people and you are saying the praises of somebody who's absent, you don't know. There may be somebody in this group who does not like this other person, and if he mentions some praise about him, he is going to pipe up with a criticism, with a negative thing, with a lashon hara. So therefore it's much better sometimes not to say. Because lashon hara is clearly a very serious offense. And here, there seems to be a directive from the Torah, Emoir. And doesn't say what you should say, just Emoir you should say. The Rebbe, as only the Rebbe can, digest this from every angle. And he says, he brings down the Rambam from various places. And he basically, the gist of the Sikha is based on the following. There are two states, there's two ways that we can view, so to speak, another person. One view is, have a dawn that's called Odom Lakav Schus. What does this mean? That it's inevitable. inevitable?
Always.
It's hardly possible that you will know a person, observe a person, for a longer period of time and not see any negative about it. Not see any criticism. Right? It's inevitable. You're always going to find something wrong with a person. If you look at yourself, you can even find something wrong with yourself if you really try.
Actually, it's pretty easy to find wrong in ourselves.
That's a tough one, right? And we have a directive in the Mishnah, and we always, you must judge every person in a favorable manner. In simple terms, this is interpreted as the common English expression, give a person the benefit of the doubt. Everybody knows what that means? What is the benefit of the doubt? If a doubt means it could be the person did this, it could be that he did something else. If he did this, then it's not a good thing. If he did something else, it was a good thing. As long as you're not sure, it's a doubt. Assume that he did the right thing. That's called benefit of the doubt. But this is not the full interpretation of the Mishnah. Benefit of that, that's very superficial. There's much more significant message in this. Means you must always find a justification, a schus, a merit, an excuse for a person's errors. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, we all learned it, I'm sure, that a person must always, the Mishnah says, you must not judge your friend unless you come to his very place. And you cannot possibly know what his real place is. You cannot possibly know, really. Even if you are in the same place where he is, but you don't know what his background is. You don't know how he got there. You don't know what weaknesses he has and what exposures he has had, what challenges he's gone through. So there's no way for you to know, really, what the other person is going through and what challenges he's going through. And therefore, you have no right really to judge. And this is why you'll always find an explanation for the person's inadequacy, some faults. This is called Donos Kodom Lekav Schus. And therefore, since you don't come schus, that means that you recognize his faults, and then you approach him and you try to help him out of his dilemma. You don't give up on him. Oh, look at this. Okay, he's got his challenges. Lekav Schus. Actually, Lekav Schus has a further, deeper meaning, as the Rebbe explains, like in that Sikha. And that is that if a person was given a certain challenge, what's called a nisoyon, certain difficulty, clearly this was given to him by his Creator. And Hashem does not give a challenge, a nisoyon, that is beyond anything that a person can withstand. Otherwise, what's the point of challenging him? Therefore, what does this tell you? That he has got much merit, he's got much hidden capabilities. And this is why he has this challenge. This is why he is in that situation. And therefore you must go and find the way to reveal his capabilities and to encourage him, and then for sure he is going to be able to fight it through, because clearly he was given the ability to fight it through. So this is one way, one step, our approach. In this approach, even though you look for the merits and you look to help this person, but on the other hand, you also pay attention to his mistakes. You recognize his shortcomings. And then you are tempted to go and mention to him, oh, you did this wrong, and you have to correct it, and so forth. Even though the cops chus, you don't blame him for it, but you say, listen, you must correct that. So you are kind of combining the two aspects, the positive and the negative. This aspect, this kind of a relationship to a person, to another person, would not be described by the word emoir. Emoir means say. This would be more described by the word daber. In the Torah there is daber and emoir. Emoir is a soft speech. Daber is a hard talk. When you start talking to a person about his faults, his mistakes, that automatically becomes a reprimand. Now it goes into the category of dibur. You're reprimanding him, reminding him. Yes, you're also encouraging him, but at the same time, you are recognizing his faults. This pasuk, this pasha is not called daber, it's called emoir. And that's what the directive of the pasha is, the Rebbe says. And what is the emoir mean? Since it's saying emoir, it means that you are not at all noticing or paying attention to any of his faults. The Rebbe is basing his explanation on the Rambam. He brings up the Rambam. It is not, from various places. And the bottom line is that there is a completely different approach. And according to what the Rambam said, this is the derech of the Talmid Chacham, that he speaks exclusively praise and good things about the other person. Never negative. So what's going to happen with his negative things? These negative things are there. So what's the point? You're going to be praising him and speaking good things about his negative things? That's certainly counterproductive. That's not what it means. And yet the Torah says in one single word, emoir. This is something you must say. This is imperative that you say it.
The Rambam says it's the way of the Talmid Chacham.
The
Rambam says that
the way of the Talmid Chacham, that he never speaks about the gnus of someone, on only shvach and loy begnus klal. That's what the Rambam says. Excuse me?
Yeah, the question is about just religious speaking to the religious guy. It's not nobody else, right? It's just that religious people, right? So between themselves or somebody else.
Somebody else.
Any person.
Any person. Any yid.
Okay. Sounds good.
So how do you understand that? The Torah does not discriminate. It says emoir. And the Rebbe says, it says in Pasha, the name of the Pasha is Amoyer, means that this is a requirement it's obligatory, so to speak, to say, and Amoyer means to say good things. Schwach. What are you going to do with all the negatives that need to be corrected? So the explanation in this is, there are two ways that a negative can be corrected. Any fault has to be corrected. Before I go there, I want to discuss the general phenomenon, the general experience of a negative experience, and then what happens, what's the result of that. There is a simple, the Rambam says, that a Baal Tshuva has a tremendous merit. What is his merit? His merit is, in contrast to the tzaddik. A tzaddik is very pure, but the tzaddik has never experienced anything of any aveda, anything of a worldly experience, anything that draws him to a different path. The Baal Tshuva did experience it, and yet after having experienced it, he breaks away, and he drags himself out of it, and he withstands all temptation. That's his merit. Now, we have to understand what happens if the person did something wrong. So, big deal, right? He did something wrong yesterday. Now he's not doing it. So now he's free of it. It's a different day, a different time. It doesn't happen that way. Any experience that a person had creates, so to speak, a certain type of a impurity. He is no longer that person who has never seen this impropriety, this impurity. He's no longer, this is the difference, the primary difference. A tzaddik has a pure view exclusively. He doesn't know of impurity. Once a person has been exposed to impurity, and even if, particularly if he had experienced it, then it would seem that he is locked into it. Because he has had that experience, there's no way that he can blot it out as if it never happened. That would seem the situation. For this, the Alter Rebbe explains a very important principle. This is important for us to understand. This is what the basis of this Nekuda here. The Alter Rebbe explains in the Tanya that when a person Chas v'Sholom does an Aveira, it can affect his thought, speech, and deeds. It can affect his emotion. It can affect his intellect, but it cannot affect the peak of his intellect, the Chochmah Shebenefesh. There are certain high peak, so to speak, of the human intellect that cannot be affected by any misdeed. Why can it not be affected by any misdeed? This is what we actually said inadvertently before we started talking. Because there's an element of the pure life of the nefesh, of the neshama, in the person. The pure life of the neshama, in our intellect, so to speak, at the peak of the intellect, is called chokhmah. In chokhmah, one is aware to the extent that one is aware. He's not necessarily aware in a formulated and logical manner. But this is what a person lives with. The absolute purity of the godly presence. This is the only thing that's real to this chokhmah. That cannot be dragged into any impurity. That always stays aloof. I want to give you a little bit of a little light story, but it still illustrates the point. The story is, this man is fed up with life. And he makes an announcement, that's it, I've had it, I'm going to jump into the lake. I am finished. And he runs out of the house, runs to the lake. Half hour later, he is back. What happened? Well, it was too cold. I couldn't get into the lake, it was too cold. What's the message of the story? I think we can, even though we can relate to it. And it goes much deeper, of course, than this. Under the worst of circumstances, when a person has no sense of the value of life, does he really lose sense of the value of life? Does he really lose the connection to real life? No way. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. That is above any, nothing can touch that, nothing can affect that. Even while he is in that despondency, yiush and all that, he still really wants to live. That element of life, the spark of life, this is what we call chokhmah. This is where a person is aware of the godly presence on a constant basis. This is when a person relates to the godly presence exclusively. This is where the world begins to make sense. Why? Because it is God, therefore there is a world. That's what Abba Paltiel said. If we recognize oh, now I understand why there is a Bira, I understand why there is an edifice. So, what this is telling us is that no matter what a person's experiences were, he still has that point in his nefesh and in his intellect that was not affected by it. And that point in his intellect which was not affected by this is what's capable to pull him out from his impurity. Not only pull him out from impurity and protect him against further involvement in impurity, pull him out altogether so that he can reach a point where he cannot even relate to impurity, because he relates only exclusively to purity of life. This is the reality of the human being. This is the reality of the Jew. So that no matter where he slipped, no matter what his experience was, there's no such thing as he will always remain with this blush. It's not true. It's not going to be easy, but he can always be extricated. But extricated completely, not only that he is going to be able to withstand the temptation, extricated completely that he will not even be able to relate to this temptation, to this impurity. That's the reality of the Jew. Because this is the moment, so to speak, the point where a Yid and Hashem is one and the same thing. Like the Alter Rebbe says, that the Nefesh, Hashem is the Yisod, the second Nefesh, is a Chelek Elokam Mima'amam, is one part with Hashem. And therefore he can be completely extricated from his impurity. This is, the Rebbe says, this is the instruction over here, Emoir. And this is the instruction of the Rambam. It says, talks about the Talmid Chochem. He speaks only Shvach. It doesn't speak any gnus, any improper, any criticism. It's not necessary to speak criticism. What's necessary is to mention one thing. You are a Yid. Who are you in reality? What's your true neshama? What's your very truth? By reminding a Yid and reminding oneself who he is, and at all times and all the time, on a repetitive basis. There's a story which I think I mentioned here, which also illustrates the gist of this point. On a more simple level. There was a Rebbe with a Talmud with the Maggid, the magician Maggid, Reb Meir of Primisyan. You may have heard of him. Primisyan was a town in Poland, and he was in Primisyan. He was the Rebbe over there. Is known as Reb Meir Primisyaner. I challenge you to repeat it. Primisyaner. What is it? Huh? Primisyaner. Reb Meir Primisyaner. This Reb Meir was a Rebbe. And in his town, in Primisyan, the mikvah was beneath a hill, a pretty steep hill. So normally there's no problem. But in the winter, in those regions, in winter, the snow would come down, and then after that the snow would melt slightly, and then it become ice. There was no way you can walk down the hill to the mikvah. No way. So everybody took their long detour around the hill to go to the mikveh. Everybody except for the Meir. He never changed his route. He always went the same way. Okay. A couple of wise guys were passing down the town, and they see what's happening. The Meir is going down this way. Everybody goes around. He says, why are we going around? They said, it's impossible to go straight. They said, if the Meir does it, we can do it. So they took up the challenge, and next day they went the same route as the Meir goes, and they came down, flying down. They hardly came with all their limbs intact, all banged up. And they saw it's really impossible to go down the hill. So they came to the Meir and said, I'm sorry, we apologize, we talented you and so forth, but nevertheless explain to us, how do you do that? How do you do that? They're pretty agile, they're pretty good sports, but you can't do it. How did you do it? So the Meir says that when you were tied up on top, you don't fall down. It says Meil, he says, is zugibun oiven. Anybody knows Yiddish? Is bound up on top, to the top. And therefore a Meil doesn't fall down. This is a true statement regarding every Yid.
You speak Yiddish again?
Yiddish?
Yes.
Meil ist zugebunden oben, fällt nicht herunter. Or more precisely, the way Meil said, Meil ist zugebunden oben, fällt nicht herunter. We have to understand that every Yid is zugebunden oiven. And even when he falls, he still remains zugebunden oiven. And by constantly reminding him of this fact that he is zugebunden oiven, and bringing out the special truth of his own intellect, special truth of his own reality, that gives him the strength, that reveals his strength, I should say. Not only to withstand temptation, where you said, you justify, you say, oh, he has a challenge. There's no temptation. He goes above temptation. He can completely, as you said, extricate himself. You can help him to extricate himself completely from any impurity, from any untoward experiences. That is ultimately what we are aiming for. We do not accept the principle that once you've fallen, then it becomes a lifelong struggle, and it's just holding your own, so to speak. It's not true. Except what we need is to be constantly reminded, and remind ourselves and remind each other. This is a moir. This is obligatory to be said. That's what the person says, emoy. Because if it is not said, then it goes into oblivion. You're not aware of it. What are you aware of? You're aware of the various challenges that you have. You're aware of all the mistakes that you made. And then you're aware of all the battles that you have to reach. There's a certain element that he says is obligatory to help to approach a Yidden from a different angle completely. Exclusively from the positive angle. Not because we ignore his challenge, not because he didn't do anything wrong, but because there is that moment, that point in him that is always zugebunden oiben. And he can always extricate himself and rise up from wherever it is. This is essentially, it's a long sikha, and the sikha that the Rebbe does basis on the Gemara and on Rambams and so forth. But the Nakuda, the point of the sikha is this which I told you. And again, as we said all the time, the main thing is to find ourselves. All Chassidus, we learn Torah, we learn Chassidus, we learn Rebbe Sichos. The most important part of all learning is to find ourselves in this which we're learning. Where do I belong in this whole thing? There's a passage that says, "V'tzadik ein ba'oretz, v'ein tzadik ba'oretz asher lo yechta." There is no tzaddik in the world, but that will never make a mistake. No yechter, that will not stray off the path. Ever so slightly, more or less, no such thing. So what does that mean? That means that we all, each one of us, have to confront ourselves with all kinds of different yechto, mistakes, slight mistakes, bigger mistakes. And sometimes, chas v'sholom, it is a mistake, knowingly, God forbid. Oh, any kinds of things can happen to a person. Any kind of thing can happen. And therefore, it is absolutely a must, absolutely imperative, that we must remind ourselves and each other as to who we truly are. Just want to give you also a little bit of an episode that would give us a little of a handle. It was an interesting thing. Somebody, a shliach in some town, asked the Rebbe. He says that he was advised to go to college so that he would, whatever he wants to brush up on, but as a result of that, he will be a better orator, a better speaker, and he would be more effective in his community. Whatever other things that he felt would be beneficial to his shlichus. So the Rebbe answered him, I want you to listen carefully. The Rebbe answered him, I want you to remember that wherever you go, you take me with you. We have to remember that wherever we go, we take our neshama with us. And if you remember that, then the neshama will lift us out of this. We must never acquiesce. Acquiesce means accept. Accept, so to speak, downgrade. You know what downgrade means? Downgrade ourselves. Okay, this is who I am. I'm not going to be this pure. I'm going to be this way. I'm going to hold my own. I'm going to fight the challenge. We must never accept. We have plenty of challenges as is, but to accept that we are always going to have a challenge because we had this experience is not acceptable. Why is it not acceptable? Because this is denying the reality of the neshama. That we say the neshama is above this whole thing. There is always that moment, there is always that situation when a person, by davening, when he says Kriya Shema, when he says Shemoneh Esrei, when he reflects by Kriya Shalamita, when he learns something, there is always that moment where a person senses, he recognizes a certain depth, a certain purity in his own mind, which completely denies anything else. And this purity is with us all the time. And this is what we have to remind ourselves of. And this is the amoir. We have to tell ourselves, You have to tell others. You don't have to mention any negative. Because the negative doesn't exist from that perspective, at that level. I mentioned, I'm sure this is kind of an illustration that I use a lot. I'm sure I use it over here also. Precisely, I don't remember, but it will be a repetition for some of you. If you picture a soldier on the front lines. A soldier on the front lines, he's standing there, and he sees an enemy soldier aiming a gun at him. Right? What is he supposed to do under these circumstances? What is a soldier supposed to do when he sees a gun aimed at him?
Talk him, fight back, shoot him.
Shoot him. Which means that he has to remove his gun from his shoulder, crack it, whatever it needs to be done, put it on his shoulder, aim, and shoot. Anybody knows what it means to aim a gun? You know. You know. Huh? It's not an easy thing.
I guess even worse under pressure.
It's not an easy thing at all. I just want to describe to you a very simple thing. This is already a regular, not a pistol, which is impossible. A regular gun. A gun, to aim a gun, you have to coordinate 3 points. Okay? There is a V right on the onset of the gun. Then there is at the other end, there is a little eye sticking out. You have to coordinate that this eye should be right in the middle of this V. You should see the eye in the middle. And then both of these points have to be coordinated to the target that you're trying to hit. One little move and you're completely off. With all the training, it remains a very difficult thing. And then imagine this soldier in that moment when he knows a gun is aimed at him. He has to have the presence of mind to get his gun off his shoulder, put it in position, aim it, and he knows he better aim it right, because he doesn't have 2 chances. He has to aim it right, he has to have full control of himself, and shoot. And hit the target. And then I ask a very simple question. Where does this soldier get the strength, the presence of mind, the character strength to do all of this? To stand up to this pressure?
Training.
Training can only train him the practical aspect. But then there is a personal strength. What is the moral strength? It's not training. If you think about it, what really happens, let me make a point. One time,
He wants to live.
Oh, he wants to live. That's exactly what people answer to me, okay? And I want to tell you, if this soldier has in mind that his life is threatened and he has to live, for sure he's going to get killed. 100%.
Because it's too much
Yeah, 100%. He's going to lose it. 100%. And he's not a soldier. He cannot do anything. You know where he has the strength, from where he gets the strength to do it? Because he is defending his king. He says, you are trying to shoot me, not me, you're trying to shoot my king. No way. There's no way, I'm not going to let you do that. He is beyond, this is invulnerable stuff. And the country, that cannot be, you cannot offend that. It's not me. What does this mean in the context of what we discussed? I'd like you to understand. Me, as a soldier, as an individual, I'm vulnerable. You can shoot me. I'm vulnerable. But my country, my king is not vulnerable. And this is what gives me the strength to stand up to you. This is true regarding every individual person. I am vulnerable to temptation. I'm vulnerable to all kinds of different stuff. But my real sense, my real neshama is not vulnerable. And that is where I get the strength to stand up to everything. And to negate it all. And to disregard all these attacks. And say, oh, you have to come here. I am vulnerable, but my neshama is not. My neshama refuses to go there. Because my neshama is not vulnerable. You cannot be tempted by this. You cannot be impure, rendered impure. And this is pure emoir. No reprimand, no hard talk, no harsh. This is simply emoir, telling the truth on the purest and the highest level. It is extremely significant for us to remember this. No matter what the background is. It does not mean that we are therefore relegated, limited to whatever our background allows. They're not. They're all capable and all have the option and they have the privilege to rise up to the highest heights. And with Hashem's help, we each will do it. And successfully redefine our lives according to Torah, according to Chassidus, and be suspended from upwards. Like Rabbi Meir said, to be suspended from upward, be held up from above. Because that's where we really are rooted. The root of our neshama is upwards, not in the bottom. I always explain that this is signified by a phenomenon that we don't pay attention to, but really it's a phenomenal thing. The human being stands on 2 feet. Different than all creatures in the world. Because all creatures in the world, they actually relate to the ground. They're supported by the ground. The human being is not supported by the ground. He is touching the ground, but what's holding up his brain? his spirit. He's held up from the top. We must not bend our head to the ground. And we have to stand proudly and know who we are and what we stand for. I wish you all success in this pride, and you should feel proudly face your lives in Mitzvah successfully.